Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ones who are coming for the first time. And not too long ago, we had here someone suggesting, have you said hi to the person sitting next to you? Good morning. Greeted the person next to you. Please do so. Yes. I think that's an absolutely wonderful habit that we should have in our Sunday meetings. After all, it's Sunday, it's a beautiful day, and it's just we're so blessed to be here and so blessed to have one another, right? And today, it's a little bit of a soap opera about today's lecture. About a couple weeks ago, David asked me to speak in his place, and I have been since then thinking, what am I going to talk about? So I had asked for help in terms of suggestions of topics, and this topic was not suggested to me, but it does have all the suggestions that were given to me within it. So the suggestions were given primarily by my friend John, and this Wednesday, we were going over, I don't know what else anymore, but at some point we talked about pain. And he said to me, I now understand the role of pain and suffering, and, but what you guys don't talk about enough is like, how do you overcome it? Okay, so check that in my mind. And then last Sunday, he said to me, maybe a good topic would be to talk about the blessings and the responsibility of, being here, of the Spiritism. I was like, okay. So I hope to address both topics within this topic, the experience of immortality in times of transition. And so, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about this very difficult week that we had as a result of our elections here. Now, don't think that I'm going to talk about politics, because we don't talk about politics in the Spiritist Center. For one reason, we try not to talk about anything that divides us, or anything that brings feelings other than love. And so those topics we're still very passionate, and a lot of times it brings hostility and unloving feelings, let's put it this way. But that being said, I think that when we think about our current situation, not only here in the United States, but in other places of the world, we are concerned. We are concerned every time that we see values that are not in line with the values that we believe playing such a big role in our society. So that worries us. And for some of us, this has been a very, very difficult week. A week of mourning, a week of loss, a week of disappointment. We understand that not everybody shares the same feelings. There are many people who are happy with the outcomes of the election for this country, and we must respect that. But we are going to talk a little bit about these feelings, and if there's anyone in here that don't share them in the context of this week, it can definitely be applied to any other context of your life. And so when John asked me to speak about, how do we heal from pain, right? So where my mind went was, well, I can think of two powerful processes that can help us. One is an inner process of emotional healing that calls for awareness, mindfulness, self-knowledge, understanding in face of all the feelings that we had. What did they represent on an individual level? If we woke up feeling bitter the next day, what does the bitterness speaks to? And so healing, part of the healing is going through this process of analysis and seeking to understand your feelings. And the more we understand and the more we sit with them, the more we're able to overcome, to process, to transcend. When we understand the reasons why we're hurting so much, it is as if we are reassigning a different meaning to the events. So I thought that I would talk about that. But then, when I sat down to put the lecture together, my mind went in a very different direction. And so there is another part of healing that Spiritism has to offer, which is a blessing, the blessing of being a Spiritist, which is the philosophical aspect of Spiritism. And what the philosophical aspect of Spiritism does is this. It puts a telescope in front of our eyes that can see so little and really broadens our vision, our understanding of life. This morning, I sat down to pretty much finish the lecture that wasn't ready. And Haroldo Dutra Dias and Divaldo Pereira Franco were speaking live at TV Fab. And I just said, let's see what they're talking about. And they were actually, Haroldo was actually talking about the transition time. And he was talking about what Spiritism has to offer. So he said, what Spiritism has to offer in these times of transition is the education, the explanation, which is, like I'm saying, is what really broadens our understanding of life, and the consolation. And the consolation, with the consolation, we're able to resign, we're able to accept. And we'll talk about those two aspects today. So we can talk about healing in a holistic way, but we're going to focus on this particular aspect. And more than a lecture, really this is a reflection that we're going to do together. So I will be using two books, Genesis and Life and Destiny of Leon Denis. If you ask me which is one of my favorite books in the entire Spiritist doctrine, I would say that Paul and Stephen is up there, but I am so deeply in love with Leon Denis and Life and Destiny. It is one of the most beautiful, powerful readings that one can do. And so I will share with you some passages, and we're going to think about together. I want to really, if you have not, you can download PDF online. And so if you have not ever heard or read, I really want to invite you to take a look at this book, because it's an incredible gift. So here's what we're going to do. In order to help us to cope with the present moment, to cope with the perplexity or the perplexities that we undergo in this planet that we live in, because it's not America, it's everywhere in the world, right? And we can talk about elections, but this is just a small thing. We live in a very sick world. We live in a world that every 4 minutes someone kills himself or herself. We live in a world where the numbers in terms of depression are sky high. So these are serious issues, because when you don't have the spiritual reference, then life becomes extremely rough, And so you can, in face of all the perplexities and what seems to be so absurd, you can easily slide into depression and feel like there is no reason to get out of bed anymore. But we're going to see that this is not exactly the way things go and the things are. So let's talk a little bit about who we are, where we are in our evolution, what is our destiny, and how do we cope with the present moment, okay? So who are we? So let's go to Life and Destiny. And here, Leon Denis says, the soul, we have said, comes from God. It is the principle of intelligence and life in us. Mysterious essence, it escapes analysis, like all things which come from the Absolute. Created by love, created for love, so tiny it can be restrained in a fragile form, so great that with the flight of a thought, it embraces the infinite. The soul is a portion, the divine essence is a portion of the divine essence projected into the material world. Let's give you a flavor of how Leon Denis writes. So, let's just remember this. We are all souls. And in his definition, is a portion of the divine essence projected into the material world. So divine speaks to our true nature. We are divine. And as hard as it might be to you right now, to any of us, sometimes we have a hard time thinking of ourselves as divines as we struggle with our own darkness. But yes, you are. In the same way that you are, everybody else is. The people who you admire, the people who you do not admire, the people that you might label as angels, and the people that you might label as demons. They are all divine. So it's important and essential for us to keep these in our minds. And then he's going to go on to say, all its bodies of flesh perish. So through reincarnations, right? Our bodies perish. The wings of destiny scatter the dust. It pursues its ascending march, the soul, through the innumerable stations of its journeys, and goes towards a goal grand and desirable, a goal divine, which is perfection. The soul contains in its natural state all the germs of its future developments. It is destined to know all, to acquire all, to possess all. And how can it achieve this in one existence? So we are divine, and each one of us having our qualities of the divine. All of us. And no sheep will be left behind. All of us. We are destined to know everything, to acquire everything, to possess everything. Possess all the virtues, possess all the knowledge, possess all the love. Very good. Now, life is short and perfection is long. Can the soul in one life develop its understanding, enlighten its reason, fortify its conscience, assimilate all the elements of wisdom, holiness, and genius? No. To achieve its end, it must in time and space have a field without limits to travel. It is by transformations without number, after millions of centuries, that the coarse mineral changes to the pure diamond, shining with a million fires. It is so with the human soul. So we're going to talk about this slide, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, we're going to talk about time. And here, I wanted to start bringing the concept of time. Because part of the affliction, part of the anxiety, the nervousness, is that time is ticking. And we are in a hurry to witness the transformation. But as Denis well states here, it's going to take unlimited transformations. A really, really long time for the state of things to change. And we'll see why in a little bit. So one, that transformation takes time. And one good reference for the time that it takes to transform things is you. It's you. You who are a spiritist. You who are, let's put it this way hypothetically, more conscious than the average person out there. You have the light of the gospel, you have the light of this philosophy in your life. I'm going to ask you, how long does it take for you to change? The things that have been bothering you, the traits of your personality that you know do not bring you happiness and harmony necessarily. How long does it take? Now we're talking about the transformation of a society, the transformation of principles. And so we cannot be anxious because the time for transformation is different than our time for things. God's time is different than ours. Because God's perspective is also different than ours. If we undergo our lives here under the perspective of mortality, we will suffer tremendously. Anxiety will be sky high, depression will take in, We'll take medication to cope with life. So one of the things that is important for us to do is to practice the perspective of immortality and to understand that God's plans and God's time is different than ours. How about time? How about time? So Genesis has a passage that talks about time. And it's very interesting. It talks about space and time, the relative concepts of space and time. And so when it talks about time, it starts by telling us that, you know, what was the time before the beginning of our planet? There was no time, right? But there was some sort of time because the universe existed before the existence of our planet. So then it says, okay, so the planet was created and then time started. And it started because with the planet and with the translation of the planet, we start to see mornings and evenings, right? But guess what? We start to count the days, the years, the centuries. But there will come a day that this earth too will disappear. And time, as we understand, will also disappear. So the spirits start talking to us about time within this concept. And then they're going to go on to say the following. The simple exposition of natural things, which is what I just talked to you about, that have given birth to time, nourishing it and allowing it to stretch out, is enough to show that from the point of view in which we must place ourselves for our investigation, time is but a drop of water that has fallen from a cloud into the sea and whose fall is measured. How interesting. And then he goes on to say, there are many worlds in the vast expanse as there are different and incongruent times. Outside these worlds, only eternity replaces such ephemeral sequences and peacefully fills the immensity of the heavens with its immovable light. Immensity without boundaries and eternity without bounds, such are the two great properties of the nature of the universe. All right, so some of you were here when Júlio Carvalho was here and he was talking about God. And he just took us through a trip into the size of the universe. And this is where I went when I read that, you know. So, look, the blessings of Spiritism, right? We are here suffering tremendously with the tiny, minute events of our lives. It's not that they are not important, but their importance is relative. It's not absolute, because this is absolute. This is absolute. So when we start to think outside of the little box in which matter places us in, a sense of calm starts to take place. Because we start to understand that 60 years, 80 years of a lifetime, 4 years of a president time, what is that? What is that? It's talking about the life of the planet. And it's telling us that immensity without boundaries and eternity without bounds, this is what is real. This is what is real. So we start to kind of, you know, changing our references as we look and appreciate life and the events of life. Time is but a relative measure of the sequence of transitory things. Eternity is not susceptible to any kind of measure from the point of view of duration. There is no beginning or end. For eternity, the present is all there is. If centuries and centuries are less than 1 second relative to eternity, what is to be said about human life? So this is in Genesis. Most of us, many of us, have never had the privilege of reading Genesis, but there is some outstanding concepts in Genesis that I invite you to explore. All right, so that spoke a little bit to us about who we are, right? And gave this concept of time. Now, where are we in our evolution? So, it's being said that we are in a time of transition. So, in Genesis, going back to Genesis, chapter 17, predictions in the gospel, it says there, "And you hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and families against families. And there will be famines, pestilence, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." It has been predicted, right? It has been predicted. So these are the times that we are living in. Times that should not trouble us. And the only way that we will not be troubled by these times is if we keep the perspective of immortality within our reach. They must come. They must come. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Why they must come in order to pass. And this is not the end. So when we think about the planetary transition, and I want to say that there is a book called Planetary Transition by the Spirit Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. I believe we actually have here, so if you want to read a little bit about it, it talks about, for example, the number of spirits, new spirits who are incarnating in our planet and how the transformation is taking place. But you know, when we think about the transformation of our planet, we tend to think and imagine how good it would be if all these external things would be different. But the transition of the planet will not happen without the transition within us, right? So it starts within us. So when we think about the planetary transition, we think about, they asked Haroldo Dutra Dias exactly this question. People are afraid that we're going to have a third world war, you know. He says, we already have many wars ongoing, you know, inner wars, and, you know, all the challenges that our societies face, as I mentioned in the beginning, with suicide, with depression, and things like that. But also in Genesis, we find this chapter, these two chapters at the very end of Genesis are super, super outstanding. So if you're interested in reading them, I highly recommend. It says, this time, however, this time of transition, of destruction, will not entail a partial change, a renewal limited to a certain area, people, or race. It will be a universal movement that will operate in the sense of moral progress. A new order of things on the verge of being established. Now, and those most opposed to it are working for it without realizing it. What an outstanding statement. This is an outstanding statement. Why? Why? Because the way that our planet evolves is by contrast. We need the contrast. We need darkness and light. We need lows and highs. And a lot of times, the ones who are opposing become the very necessary instrument that will catalyze progress. Because they are the tools for each one of us. They are the opportunity for each one of us to embrace and to live the very principles that we talk about. So they will foster progress, even working against it, in two ways. By giving each one of us the opportunity to practice the view of the immortal spirit, which is what we're talking about,
And a lot of times, unfortunately, in the state that we live in the world that we live in, it's still necessary for scandals to come. But woe for the ones who are promoting the scandals, because the scandals will shake our societies. And a lot of times it is through the scandal that deeper and more lasting transformations will take place. We must trust the higher order. We must not despair at any time. Everything is in place. I was reading the paper this morning, and from beginning to end, every single article is written, and as you go through them, all you feel is fear, is uncertainty, because we are dealing with a time of tremendous unpredictability. And so when we don't know what's come, it doesn't matter which aspect of society you want to look at, you don't know what's going to be tomorrow. Right? So I'm reading, and I'm like, why am I reading this? You know? It's like, you start feeling like uneasy. Right? And then you have to say, look, let's go back to the center. Let's go back to the center. There's nothing to be feared. Nothing to be feared. This is a human, we're having a human experience here. This is all part of a higher plan. Alright, so rid of the dregs of the old world and compose of more purified members, the future generation will find itself animated by different ideas and sentiments than the present generation, which is disappearing by leaps and bounds. The old world will be dead and will live in history like the medieval era with barbaric customs and superstitious beliefs. We are moving forward, people. But the forward movement, the progress is not a straight line. It's not. It's not an ascending, straight and beautiful line that we see in a graph. That's not how progress takes place. There is movement, there's coming and going. There's ups and downs. But every single movement is necessary to foster progress, to move us forward. And I think this really puts things into perspective. Someone may say, this is the end of the world. No, it's not. We used to hang people and applaud. And that was like, Sunday party. Let's go, hang another one and celebrate. And we would rejoice. We're not that barbaric anymore. We're pretty primitive still, I agree. But things have evolved in the same way that these barbaric customs are part of history. They're gone in the way there was in the medieval era. Will come a day that we're going to look back at these times and we're going to say, those barbaric folks, man, how could they do those things, right? That's us. We did this. We hung people. Now we're here in the Spiritist Center. So there's hope for everybody. There's hope for society. We are going forward. All right. So what is our destination, right? Our destiny, better saying. Let's go back to Denis. To construct a self and individuality through thousands of lives, that's our destiny. Accomplishing hundreds of worlds and under the direction of our older brothers and our friends in space. Our destiny is to climb the paths to heaven, to mount ever higher, to become one of the authors of the divine drama, one of the agents of God in the eternal work, to work for the universe as the universe works for us. Behold the secret of destiny. So the soul mounts from sphere to sphere, from circle to circle, united to the beings it has loved, and goes on its pilgrimage, that seeking divine perfection. Arriving at the supreme region, it is free from the law of rebirth. Reincarnation is no more an obligation for it, but an act of will and a work of sacrifice when it has a mission to accomplish. This is it. This is us. Now, all of us, good and bad, this is what we are
That's what awaits for us. And Denise is going to continue by saying, reaching the supreme height, the Spirit says, I am free. I have broken forever the fetters which chain me to the material world. I have acquired science, energy, love. But that which I have acquired I want to share with my brothers. And for that purpose I will go and live among them. And I will offer them the best that is in me. I will take a body of flesh. I will descend again among those who suffer in ignorance to console, enlighten, and aid. And then we have Laos, Buddha, Socrates, scribes. We have all the great souls who have given their lives for humanity. So this is what happens, believe it or not. So when we are like narrow-minded, we keep dreaming about going to the higher regions and being like, enjoying a life without reincarnation and, working for God and enjoying all the bliss of heavens. But those who can enjoy the bliss of heaven, they love us so much that they choose to come back and to guide us. And that's it. That's it. So we're not alone. We have a number of highly evolved spirits who are with us every day, guiding us individually and as a society. Because once you have reached perfection and you love so much, you can't leave the other ones behind. So God is always with us, and the good spirits are always with us. Across the cycles of time, all will attain to perfection. The criminals of the past will become the sages of the future. And an hour will come when our faults will be effaced, our more wounds healed. Frivolous souls will become seers, obscure minds will be illuminated. All the forces of evil which vibrates in us will be transformed into forces of good. From the feeble, indifferent being whose mentality is shut to all great thoughts, at the end of the ages will become forth a powerful spirit, which contains all knowledge, all virtue, and realize the most sublime truth. These will be the work of accumulated existences. So it's just a reminder again. And I could have been telling you this without reading the text, but I think it's so marvelous the way that Denis writes, and I really want to get an appreciation of his writings and of his thinking. And so, all of us, no one is in essence a criminal. No one is in essence anything other than light and a divine being. But we must understand that it takes time. It took time for us to get where we are today, and we counted with numerous benevolent souls who guided us from complete unconsciousness to where we are today. And the law that reigns in the universe is the law of solidarity. In the same way that we have been helped all the way up to here, it is also our duty to reach out and help the ones who are walking behind us. A great many indeed will be required to bring forth such a change. But nothing is powerful and durable which has not taken time to germinate in the shadow and mount towards heaven. The tree, the forest, nature, the plants say to us in their profound language, no seed is lost, no effort is wasted. The stem does not give its leaf or fruit until its hour comes. And life did not appear upon earth until after immense geological periods of time. Look at the diamond, whose splendid ornaments the beauty of women, shining with a million fires. How many were the changes to which she was submitted before acquiring this incomparable purity? How long was its incubation in the breast of obscure matter? This is also so beautiful. Now, we want to change. We want to change our societies. But no change will be durable and will be powerful if it does not take the time so that the ideas can be worked. So that new generations can come, to the old ideas, new nuances can be. So that arguments, discussions, debates, philosophical thinking
when we face the difficulties of our society, we are invited to be creative, we're invited to be intelligent, we're invited to seek solutions. And so it is this hard work in time, within time, that will make the changes solid. Because part of the frustration is like, part of my frustration was like, I thought we were in a different place in this country. But guess what? We are not. We are not. I think we are moving towards a different place. But again, it's not my time. It's God's time. And there is a time. There is a time for everything under heavens, isn't there? Right? But I think this is also important because for many, the feeling that time was wasted, efforts were wasted. No, never, never. Nothing's ever wasted. And whatever efforts are being done to moralize this society, this is not a political thing, this is a spiritual thing. No effort is ever wasted. It builds up over time. It builds up with the experiences. Now, should we move to Canada or to Jupiter? Let's lighten up a little bit. Because many want to go to Canada. But if you are in my class on Wednesdays, you would rather go to Jupiter. Because we have learned that Jupiter is a much more evolved planet. And things there are outstanding. And you can read that at the Spirit's Review. I cannot tell you the year right now off my head. But the Spirit's Review, Kardec writes about Jupiter. It's an awesome place, much better than Canada. Okay? So,
No offense to Canada.
No offense to Canada. No offense to any place in this world, right? All right. Whether you choose to go to Canada or to Jupiter, we need to be ready to make the move. All right, you might say, okay, I'm not going to wait for this humanity. This thing is very slow. I'm going to speed up my progress, and bye-bye humanity. I'm moving on to a better planet, right? That's also an option. So, what do we need to do to move to Jupiter? The passage of souls from Earth to the other worlds is effected under the empire of certain laws. The people globes vary in their nature and density. The etheric envelopes of souls, the pure spirit, the spiritual body, could not adapt themselves to new centers save under special conditions of purity. It is impossible for inferior spirits in their erratic life to penetrate high worlds and describe their beauty to mediums. The same difficulty occurs, is still greater even when it comes to reincarnation in other worlds. The high spheres are inaccessible to the majority of Earth spirits. It still grows and not sufficiently evolved to permit them to dwellers in those far worlds. So, here's the thing. If you want to go to Jupiter, you need to lose weight. Okay? Spiritual weight. You need to get lighter so that you can ascend. Okay? We ain't going anywhere with these heavy pure spirits that we have. Alright? How do we lose weight spiritually speaking? You gotta lose the hostility. You gotta lose the darkness. I'm sorry?
Hatred, hostility.
Guilt.
Guilt. I love that. You have to lose the guilt. Right?
Ego.
The ego. Right? So, as we move forward in the next years, in our lives, right? Let's just be conscious that we are not going to get there by acting, feeling, and behaving in the same ways of the ones that we consider unconscious. We have to differentiate ourselves somehow. Otherwise, we are going to hang around here for a long time. By our same needs and by the law of affinity that will attract us to this planet. Alright, I'm going to skip this one. Let's go to, because of the time, dealing with the present. Okay, so how are we going to deal with the present moment? What can we do? Enrique's opening reading was outstanding. I love the words of Emmanuel, right? He talks about the importance of the gospel. He mentioned that the different levels of disability, the paralysis of the spirit, was one of his expressions. So the gospel helps us to dwell with the present moment. And so I just opened this page in the gospel that talks about patience and resignation, just to extract two little pearls for us to consider. So one of them is patience. Patience too is a form of charity, forgiving those whom God has placed on our path to be instruments of our suffering and to put our patience to test. All right, so that's pretty self-explanatory. I don't think I need to explain that. And the Spirit goes on and says, life is difficult, I know. It is composed of 1,000 nothings, which are pinpricks that end up hurting us. But we must consider the duties imposed on us, the consolations and compensations we receive in return, and then we'll see that the blessings are more numerous than the sorrows. So patience. Patience is not only patience with my kid, it's patience with the ones who persecute me, it's patience with the ones who think differently than me, and it's again perspective that patience is love in action, is charity. Okay? And so again, if we want to be higher spirits, we need to take the challenges and accept them and embrace them so that we can move to another level, right? So we are facing big challenges. So I'm telling you, this is an outstanding opportunity to become more evolved at a faster pace if you embrace it the right way. And then resignation and obedience, because remember in the beginning I wrote that, the blessings of Spiritism, education, clarity, and consolation, right? So we learned so much, right, today. We reflected so many important, essential concepts. And it helps us to go through life. It also gives us resignation. Now, I love this quote from the Gospel. Obedience is the consent of reason, and resignation is the consent of the heart. Both obedience and resignation are active forces because they carry the burden of the trials that insensate rebellion lets drop. So I am obedient because in my mind I understand the laws. I understand what is going to make me happier, what's going to bring harmony. So although I may be struggling with my feelings, I will do my best each day, and with some success and some lack of success, it does not matter. We are not perfect. We're going to have moments where we're going to say, I don't want to even think about spiritism anymore, and forget about all those things. I'm really angry. I'm devastated, right? Okay, that's fine. Let it be. Do whatever you need to do. But then go back to the center. Go back to the center. So it's impossible to be centered all the time. So if you're having a human moment, tell yourself, I'm having a human moment. Give yourself a big hug. Say, it's okay. Then do a prayer. Send me a text message. And then go back. Walk back. That's fine. As long as we walk back. As long as we find that center again. And this might be a little bit of a bipolar experience because you come and go, you come and go, you come and go. But it gets better. It gets better. Very good. Now, keep calm. They will reincarnate. Okay? So, there is hope. There is always hope. I think the message that we want to convey is going back to John's initial request. I think when I started putting this lecture together literally yesterday because I just didn't have any time. But I was stuck 4 hours yesterday with my car broken, and I just kept reading, and I was so happy, to see all those concepts and to think, oh my gosh, we are so incredibly blessed to have these much higher perspective in life. And we should take this perspective to all the challenges of our life. But we also have great responsibilities. So what that means is whatever it is that we believe, whatever values that we hold, we must continue to fight for them. None of these means give up your dreams, go home, sit down and do nothing. On the contrary, what all that means is keep faith in God. Everything is right. Let's make the best of each situation. And yes, keep doing your part. Keep doing your part. Keep advocating for the beliefs and for the values that we embrace as Christians. But do it. Do it. In a way that's also consistent, which is always, always, in no other way but through love. Thank you.